tree and plant appraisal qualified. He's a CAF certified forester, an ISA certified arborist, and he's certified in tree risk. He's also has training in nursery grading. He's a landscape inspector. He's a registered mangrove trimmer with the Florida Department. And he's also a CTLA certified landscape inspector. I think the pinnacle of John's career is that he's a Lambda Alpha International Honorary Land Economics Society member. This is a very distinguished award that you get for defending, John's work is defending trees and landscape values. I've known John for many years, and if there's one person in the industry that is dedicated, it's John Harris. He's dedicated to connecting people, to sharing knowledge and advancing practices. So I know we're all looking forward to hearing from him, and I open the floor to John.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you, Henry, and thank you to the Miami-Dade Landscape Inspectors Association chapter for bringing me back to the microphone, at least formally. Everybody knows that if I don't have something to say, there wasn't anything to learn in any class that you've ever been to. So now let's see if my class is worth attending as well. So, yeah, a lot of qualifications, a lot of industry experience. You know, landscape inspecting is a part of our everyday. But let me just caution those who are attending this class about report writing. As I put in the title, this is about effective and useful report writing, principally for public agency business employees as doing inspections, being code officers, so writing up code cases, writing up violations, as well as professionals submitting reports. So you may be here tonight to see what it's like for a 40-year industry experience, 4 degrees, 9 certifications person to write a report. I'm not going to spend an hour on that, right? What you need to learn is how to be more effective and more useful in your report writing, and that's why I'm here. So let's see if this is the class for you, as opposed to just a class all about me. So let's get started with that. We are the Landscape Inspectors of Florida. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you. So report writing, right? I've already given an introduction. Deborah's been through it. So I think I know what I'm going to talk about. You'll see if I know what I'm talking about. So what are you expecting to learn, right? Again, this is a class for you. So take a couple minutes, write a couple notes to yourself, or put some ideas up in the chat, and let's see at the end of the class if what I've covered is at least some of the topics that you're looking for, if not maybe closer to all the topics. As I tell everybody, I only get to be a better presenter or a better educator based on the input that I get from those who attend. So far, everybody is still interested in me teaching, so that's a start. But what I want to make sure is what I was asked to speak about is what I do speak about, so that you learn what you hope to learn. So reports can be useful, or reports can just be information. You know, what's the purpose of a report? It is to report, i.e., there's a reason that you spent the time to write it down. There's a reason you spent the time to schedule a meeting. You need to be organized in your format and your layout. When we're talking about written reports, whether, quite frankly, it's a review comment about why the submitter didn't sign the arborist report, and you'll only review it if the arborist report is signed, so please sign it and resubmit it. You need to be organized, your format and layout, or it's a 40-page, $20 million fire damage claim that has 15 different sections to it and contains information on 5,000 trees, right? Some reports take more time to organize than others. I understand that. Who the report is for and why? For me, that's the first thing you want to state, whether you're writing it as a one-page letter form report, or again, a long report with a lot of information. Here's something else that I think has been a turn in the last 10 years, in the last 5 years, and even more so in the last 2 years. Writing emails as a professional is a report. Like I said, writing review comments is a report. Writing inspection reports or NOVs are reports. I find a lot of writing, even on the job writing, to be more like, dear friend, I'm concerned that you don't know the difference between an oak and Australian pine tree. Please help me by correcting your mistake. As opposed to, as a professional, the oak that you identified as an Australian pine, please re-inspect it, identify it, and correct your submittal. So I'm just giving you a couple simple examples, but we'll look at some in writing. The other part of writing reports that is a current trend and is something that I think is effective is using active voice and sentence structure. So rather than saying what we did and how we did and why we did and so on we did, we're going to talk about we did, right? Or I inspected the trees on XYZ property in ABC city, period. The inspection was on this date. There were this many trees. So active voice, just point for point. Here's another point, right? And I teach this when I teach grant writing, but it's a part of every report class that I teach as well. Find out what your audience needs to have in your report and make sure that you include that information in your report, right? A report about all the trees on a property when the requirements were all trees 2 inches in diameter and larger and all palms 16 feet tall and larger is not a complete report. Why do you expect it to get reviewed? Why do you expect it to get used if you didn't even include all the minimum requirements for what your report is supposed to state, right? If it's a report, you know, again, general arborist reports, you know, the diameter to the inch or the height needs to be to the foot or 5 foot increments. Again, you need to know what those requirements are, what your observations are, what your comments are, whether you're supposed to provide recommended disposition or not. So again, write, blah, 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 blah. I too can give myself tongue twisters right in the middle of the class. So write what is required, not less, right? So for those of you who are looking for report writing 101, here's your slide. There's a title on your report. There's a client or a contact or a customer. There's a date, and for me, any revision dates. I do reports. Don't be surprised. And I too go through revision comments that may run 5 or 6 times over. I put the original submittal date and each revision date on that report so that if there's a need to go back and prove that we already stated what was supposed to be stated, we can do that. Also, because I do expert witnessing in legal cases, this is something that identifies that the report's been updated and updated and updated or revised so people know to ask why. So just FYI, some reports have dates that run 2 lines long because the project for a development site to get the permit can run 2 years long. Not just in Miami, folks. Could happen in other cities too, but all right, introduction. What and why is your report? For me and for other people, put a summary up front. A lot of people, especially when a report is quote unquote 5 pages or longer, 10 pages or longer, 50 pages or longer, they're not there to read the whole thing. They're there to find the information that they need to find to determine what they need to determine or to check off that you reported what they needed. Having a summary up front can help everybody use your report as opposed to set it aside and then call you and say, the question I need answered is this. And you say, well, that's on page 49. And they say, thanks, but answer my question because I'm not reading 48 pages to get to my answer. All right. Again, professional report writing or scientific reporting includes a methodology, how you did what you did. But for those of us in this industry, how you followed the industry standards, right? Maybe you should put in every report, and my field work followed the arboricultural or landscape or green industry standards relevant to the inspection that I completed. I know this is being taped, so you can play that back and write it down later. Data and observations, right? What data you collected, the observations that are necessary, because when you say a tree is recommended to remove, you should have reasons for removal as opposed to saying that the tree is in good condition, that's the largest tree on the site, and I recommend it for removal. That's a lot different than observations that say the tree is a large tree on the site. The tree has 4 leaders, 3 of which are dead for the top 20 feet of them. 1 leader broke off in Hurricane Irma X years ago. Therefore, this tree is in critical condition and I consider it a high hazard and a need for removal. Oh, and by the way, here's photos of the tree in case you don't believe what I say. Photos is in all caps because for me, without the photos, you can say whatever you want. And for those of you reviewing reports being submitted to cities, or I'm going to also say those of you who are writing inspection reports as a city inspector, can say whatever you want. Put the photo in, and then what you say actually is going to have meaning and actually has a fact or a piece of evidence that says that is the tree that you evaluated, and everybody else either can agree with your observations or can say, well, I only count two leaders that are dead or dying instead of 3, Mr. Harris. Where did you get the 3rd? Oh, in picture 3 on the other side of the tree that I forgot to look at. Right? Almost all reports that we write in our industry, meaning landscape inspectors, code officers, and those in private business making submittals to landscape inspectors and code officers and plan reviewers, need to have photos. If only because we all love to see the landscape. All right. So then you get a conclusion. I'm not saying take your summary and write it all over again. But for those of you who are getting paid for the length of your report, maybe you do include the whole summary over again because that might carry you to an extra page and another $1,000. I don't know. References and bibliography. So here's the secret. This is a simple guide to sections of a professional report. There are probably 1,000 other guides online. Feel free to find your own. Feel free to follow that. You know, again, in the chat, if you got any other sections you think I should have included or not included, please put a list. We can take a look at that. But let me give you a couple of examples. All right. So for those of you who were hoping to see the kind of reports that get written by, sorry, somebody like me, where is it going? So if I move everybody there and I take this down. So here's a damage claim report. It has a table of contents. I'm kind of blocking out some of what is in the information. Right, so we got a table of contents. We have all the different subheadings as well as the main headings, you know, as we've talked about before. You know, so here's a summary. You know, this is a report for about a $7 million damage claim, so 28 pages. You know, the more dollar values you have, the more the report may have, right? So, you know, bullet points and numbered points so that you can come back to these major points like the deficiencies and the issues that come up as for reasons for the damages are worth putting in a list, a numbered list, right? Explanation about the damage assessment being done, you know, what the report includes as far as cost of restoration and otherwise that may be part of it. I'm not going through every page. I'm just starting at this and then I'm going to start flipping faster. So this is for one of the associations in the Arvida community that became the Weston or City of Weston. Some of you may recognize the name of it. So in my upfront summary, you know, everybody wants to know what the, you know, total damage claim is. So that's what gets put up there, as well as the dates for when that damage value is valid versus not valid. So then you get into the introduction with the background of the community, the site information that had to be reviewed, what the assignment was that we followed through on, what the purpose and use of this particular report is versus what it shouldn't be used for, the testing and analysis that was done, all of the evaluation items and what the definitions of the different parts are. You know, one point here, getting into technical scientific writing, here you have footnotes on a page for where those go to. You know, this is a more complicated report than I would think needs to be submitted for most tree inspections or for tree violations or for tree disposition or arborist reports for development permitting. But this is how, you know, major reports are written for multi-million-dollar claims. So we go past all of that information, we get to the discussion about the what and whys of damages and how that relates to development and the landscape plans and the landscape plan requirements. What are the major issues, plant quality and grading? You know, how many trees out of the total trees actually were below quality? You know, about half. You know, interesting facts in an old situation, but these are the types of properties that, you know, many city inspectors are looking at today that, to me, really, you know, still happen. We're still doing probably 1 to 5 developer turnover, or what's called 558 statute inspections every month in the work that we work on at Earth Advisors. So soil depths and plant growth, surface rooting, you know, all these different issues. You know, the increased costs of trying to relocate, plant, and establish larger size trees versus smaller trees that grow out. You know, a lot of the lessons that we're learning. The conclusions, you know, bringing back what the main points are for this particular damage claim, ending with, again, the total cost, right? The second to last paragraph is to slam the point home. You know, you make a closing and you make it worth reading the report. The other thing that comes up, especially in these legal written reports, is an affidavit that has a lot of particular language that you need to think about and you should have in your reports, you know, and I can explain the reasons why and how in a different class that's about writing, you know, damage claim reports. So the appendix and the exhibits. So boom, there's a, you know, $6 million damage claim report. Now you guys can check off that you've all learned and seen what a long report is and how ineffective and not useful it would be to write a report like that for 5 trees on a property that need to be permitted for removal or preservation for a development site, right? 20 pages sounds like it'd be too long. So here's another form for us. This is a short form report. This is about a $16 million damage claim for one of the wildfires out in California that we spent years on years traveling to. So executive summary, like we had, limitations for the report. But here's something that, you know, may or may not be of interest, but, you know, here's something that's on every page, right? There's a purpose, there's a limitation. You know, the reason for writing a short form report is because it's not meant to contain all the information that may be needed and may be questioned later. You know, there are development projects that may start out with providing the information about the trees first, getting everything established for the tree disposition. And then there are, you know, 25 out of 500 trees that are arguable because of their size, because of their species, because of their condition, whether they need to be removed or not, or whether the 15-story building should be made smaller to save those 25 trees. And then there is the tree risk assessments or the level 3 inspections and the reporting beyond that. So this is just to say that there is a purpose for short form reports, there's a purpose for long form reports, but the other thing is that there's a lot of language that's a template language, no matter what the report is. So remember that word as we move along, because being more effective as especially a municipal employee or a public agency employee and writing your reports from 1 paragraph or 1 sentence review comments to inspection reports where you're going out to inspect and determine what's wrong on a landscape job site is consistency, consistency, consistency. and having templates that you use is how you get there. So reports being effective. So how does a report become effective, not just useful? Again, writing what's requested, answering the question or the questions, right? If I'm writing an arborist report for tree disposition on a site being developed, the question that I'm answering is what trees are on the property. The second question is what impacts are going to come from site development. So I know that what I write about each tree and what I put in the report needs to focus on that, not focus on the weather, not focused on how nice these trees are, if they were going to be kept on the landscape. We already know the site's being developed from a 1,300 square foot house to a 4,800 square foot house. So trees are going to have to get removed. Stay to the point. Here's another important part, which as I get to do expert reviews, either as an expert for cities, as an outside expert brought in to assist with more complicated plan reviews, or especially with larger scale violations, as well as just reports that I write or court cases. I really enjoy reading other people's reports because it's amazing how many people don't stick to the facts, don't stick to what's shown in the photos, and extrapolate or suppose and expand and make up conclusions because that's what their client is paying them to say. That's what they think that they're there to do. I appreciate those people in our industry because it gives me a lot more business. Well, what I'm here to say is don't become one of those people, right? I'm here to help you. I'm not here to put you in a position where you can't be a better expert or a better landscape inspector than me. This is a class about how you can surpass what I do, what Deborah does, what Quatisha does, what other people that you know do by becoming better at reporting. Those who report well, do well. That's something that I find in all my business consulting and mentoring that I do with experts across the country. Those who report well, do well. So I think that also comes into play for those who report well as an agency employee do well. So my green point is the other point that I enjoy saying as many times as I can. Listen, Mr. XYZ developer, what I'm telling you is that I'm not going to call the slash pine an Australian pine and see what happens. I want you to get your permit in 30 days. You want to get your permit in 30 days. Let's just tell the truth, negotiate the mitigation. The truth will set you free because the point is you want to get your permit. But if you want to play games, here's somebody else's name and you can call me later when it doesn't work. All right. Evidence is made up of facts. You know what other people tell you. So this is in your code cases, you're going to be interviewing property owners. You may talk to other people that do the work. So, you know, you can take what they state, restate it, use that information because especially in a code case, you're there to present the case and present what happened, what people say happened. So write to get your points read, not telling a story. Like I said before, bullet points or numbering points is a lot more effective than just writing paragraph after paragraph, word after word. So save your readers time. You know, everybody who really knows me knows that I can be the king of run-on sentences and I can write and write and write. Just like in a class, I can talk and talk and talk and explain and explain and explain. So you could read it and you can look at this later on the tape. Remember, having set statements and having statements that you can just pull off of a list and put in like over and over again. Arborists don't sign the reports. So just have a cut and paste list. You take it, you put it in the review comment, and you're done. And you know that you and the 5 other inspectors or plan reviewers that work in your city, XYZ, are also putting the same comment in. So you're being consistent. Ding, ding, really important. So I'm going to show you a report from 2004, what's upcoming for me in the future, which are some of these automated reporting, which, you know, some people agree with, some people don't. And, you know, it's coming, but it's coming because people want it done sooner, faster, cheaper. And then a recent report for a tree permit and then another report for another tree permit. So way back in 2004, and let me, as I'm bringing this up, the other point that I'm going to be making in these reports is about the use of photos and the sequence of photos. So this is an older report, you know, not as much written, not as much information about following standards and the information that I'm talking about, but we've gotten a lot better since then, right? So photographs for the trees being presented for removal. Here's the little tree data that I wrote out, right, in one sentence. Now you see us providing worksheets with a lot more data, a lot more observations given. You know, the pictures are a little blurry, but what I tell people is this is a sequence you want to use, whether you're the inspector or you're the private arborist on the site. When you're dealing with trees that need to be evaluated and somebody needs to look at later, you know, maybe just from the pictures, you want an overall view. And for trees that have problems, you probably are going to need 2 or 3 overall views to point out the different parts of the tree and what the issues are. We try and include things like street signs in some of our overall views, or the addresses of houses and overall views to help people place where that tree is located. We do close-ups with captions about what the issue is we're pointing out, right? Overgrown surface roots, lifting the sidewalk, potentially breaking. You know, here's a short sentence. Those of you that read our reports today know that we write almost a paragraph in a lot of our captions these days. You know, snap hazard, poor form. Wait, folks, calm down. This was 2004. I'm not telling you this is the way to, you know, write your report or the wording to use now. Snap hazards probably isn't something that we talk about these days. I understand. So again, a sequence of trees that are together to show how they relate to each other, where they are in their conditions related to each other. And then close-ups of particular trees and the defects or deformities or damages that are for us the highest reasons for removal. And then the backside showing other defects and damages related to why we see this as a potential for removal. And then another one with a close-up of recent damage and a close-up of the regrowth on the second leader that was removed. You know, another one with a close-up of the leader removed and the angle of the tree, as well as somebody placing the edger blade that has begun to be encompassed by callus wood. So I guess, you know, it's a place to store your extra edger blades, right? I don't know. You know, why would this tree be recommended for removal? This is why we just have one picture for that trunk damage, right? So that's an older report. So here's an example in of what is an automated report page. This is from an inventory system that we use, also urban forestry software program that we use. So here we have basically the data that we collect and fill in out in the field, as well as some of the calculations that get calculated from that data, like the tree protection zone, the critical root zone. You know, the observations that we have in a pick list that come out and I'll put together in a neat and tidy paragraph. You know, if we have maintenance recommendations, they be placed here as opposed to just doing this inspection for a development site. We have the overall picture. We have the close-up on one side, we have the close-up on the other side. But on these automated systems, at this point, we're not given caption boxes to be able to fill in. So I'm still working with this program to get it to allow for some of what we do otherwise. But again, I'm giving you an example. The other interesting part is in some of these systems, they automatically put the street view as well as they may put the overhead location point based on the GPS data so that each tree is placed to be able to see it and find it later if somebody wants to look it up on Google Maps. I think that's a great reference to have. So some of our inventory reports, especially for development sites or even some of them for maintenance planning, are actually done with this system. And these are the pages that are behind the narrative cover sheet about the purpose of the report and where the report's going and the summary about what is in the report. So This is where the future is, I think, happening, and there is a lot more automation and templates being done. Sorry, especially with city permitting and city plan review processes. So another example for utilizing that. So here's a recent report that was written for a, well, here. So there's the title, right? Arborist report for residential property. Okay, I think I get what the title of this is. The subtitle, it's a tree inspection and consulting arborist recommendations, or maybe you put opinions instead of recommendations. So that's what should be contained in the report. Here's the date, and here's the inspection date. Here's the property owner, here's the property. Here's a summary of what was done, the industry standards followed, results and recommendations from the inspection, where to find the tree disposition recommendations, that we followed the standards of the city, all the data is included, a little paragraph or sentence here about the Florida statute 163.045. Wait, calm down. Not every report is about you can remove this tree without a permit. This report is about actually getting a permit, but allowing for that there may be decisions that go back to this depending on the condition of that tree that's being reviewed. So here's our current data table that's provided, or our tree disposition worksheet for the trees, common, all of the required information and the disposition. Oh, interesting. Tree 1 was removed previously. Why would Mr. Harris report a tree that doesn't exist on the property? Oh, because the client gave a tree survey to the city that included that tree 4 months ago. So I know that that city is going to be asking me, where's the tree? So here's the site today in an overall view. Well, let me not skip the appraisal worksheet for particular trees of a certain size that needed to be valued and according to this particular city's code, right? I think I said that before. Make sure you meet all the requirements in your report. This is part of meeting that. So here's a close-up from 2019, which is the most recent, showing tree 1. Here's a closer view of tree 1 with what I would identify as potential problems with it, aside from its location related to future development. Oh, here's a picture of it today, right? Now, my client wasn't real happy with this report. I agree. But when I explained to them the truth will set you free, so I wouldn't try submitting some other arborist reports that said that that tree was a high damages and multiple trunks and would never survive and needs to be removed, because they're going to look at the same Google Earth that I did. So let's just see what your replacement's going to be and follow the city code. And I might get them not to give you a notice of violation and just settle this for the normal mitigation. Or you can just go ahead, lie, cheat, and steal, and then you can come back to me later and pay for it over again. I don't care. You're the client. Or sorry, you're the property owner. You decide. So construction was already being laid out on the property. I take the pictures the way they are, right? So good condition palms. I give close-ups of the bases because this permit is about the driveway and expanding the driveway and where it's going to stay in place or not. So where they're located related to the driveway. I think most of the code officers I work with or plan reviewers are going to see this, and the plan reviewer might send a code officer out, because I think this violates the tree protection zone that wasn't placed or required by the city yet, because the city didn't know that construction was starting yet. But again, not my fault. The client asked me to do this report and this inspection. It is what it is. I'll help them get through it, but the truth is the truth, right? Work with the facts. It'll get you through it. Here's a clariodendron. I don't think that it should count as a tree. Different inspectors, different cities. We collect more data and more trees than some other people do, but that's so that we all can make the choices and not have to go back to the site over and over again. And in case you don't realize it, this report ends here. We try and be pretty simple with how we do these things, although people think of me as pretty complicated. And I get that. But if I don't get this complicated, I don't get back to getting simple. So here's another report. This is a report for Miami Beach. This is a follow-up report on a development permit about a particular tree on a property that was discussed as being an issue. There's an error in this report. So I'll get to it in a minute, but just to say to you that I'm not perfect either. I'll make mistakes and I'll have to correct them. So, you know, be human, accept your mistakes, do your revisions as they're asked, and you again will get farther in your job and be a pleasure to work with, as opposed to this blippity blip every time they submit to our city, always wants to argue, never wants to do the revisions. Let's hold them up. Right? I like to be the guy that says, can you look at this before I submit it? Because I want it to be right before we all make it official. You'll do better, I'll do better, and you'll have a permit review that happened in 10 days instead of a permit review that took 60 days. That'll look good for your record too. So results and recommendations of this inspection, you know, all laid out again, just numbered points. You know, here's the overall tree picture. Looks like it's leaning to me. Maybe it looks like it's leaning to you. Yeah, I didn't put my car in the right place when I pulled up. I almost moved it before I did the report. All right, so here it is with the tree protection zone that may be a little small for that size tree, right? Well, I guess this is why it's a little small, because the foundation of the new, you know, 8,000 square foot house is approximately, oh wait, I measured it, 1.5 feet away from the base of the tree, all roots cut to 4 feet down. I think this is an imminent hazard. I think this is a tree that needed to be removed, and obviously they got permitted to remove it. But this is another example of a report, and especially about laying out photos to tell the story or present the facts so that you go from the tree everybody's concerned about to what they should be concerned about to the measurements that help everybody make a decision that's right for the property, right for the public, you know, right for the project. So here's another example about writing. This is more about specifications, but many of you, even in your municipal, or I should say public agency, I always say municipal, but we were county agencies, state agencies, cities, towns. So here's a couple of contract specifications. And the reason I'm putting these up here is you want to have specifications written in a plan, specifications written in a contract or an RFP or an RFB, request for bid, that actually present what's going to be done, how it's going to be done, the amount that's going to be done, which branches are going to be included, so that when you go to inspect that work, which is what I'm writing here in green, performance needs measures to allow you to judge what's done correctly or incorrectly. You know, you specify for what you're going to inspect so that you can inspect and get what you expected, right? I think I gave myself too many tongue twisters tonight, but I'm enjoying it. Hopefully you are too, right? So consistent reports. Maybe this is the most important for public agency employees. Consistency, not just consistency in reports that you write from 1 year to the next, 1 month to the next, one project to the next, i.e. one submitter to the next, but also over the years. So you need to know your agency's code standards and guidelines. Recommended formats in some cities provide recommended or example or required plan details and specifications. You know, if you go from city A and now you're working for city C, talking about why city C should be following what you used to do in city A because city A has a much better tree preservation ordinance doesn't help you do your job, because if you start mixing that up, people that know what they're doing on the submitter side or the permittee side are going to have a lot of ammunition to say, you're not treating us fairly, you're not following the codes, and we're following the codes, and your supervisor needs to set your, you know, review and comments aside. So being consistent, part of this being consistent for me is getting together in your city or getting together as the landscape inspectors and coming up with some standard comments that relate to standard issues or standard, I'm going to use the word deficiencies. And if everybody wrote deficiencies, your submittal is deficient because you get a lot more reaction from those developers who are investors or attorneys, because deficiency is a much more powerful word than correct your mistakes. And to me, it is a deficiency. All right. So some cities actually have a checklist to use in going through what's in a submittal, as far as in the plan or in the arborist report or in the violation answers. Full disclosure, yes, I've consulted with some cities and helped to put this together. So I know from whence I speak, because I'm a part of putting these together and seeing cities become more efficient, more effective in what they're doing and how they're doing. All right, anything to add to this? Again, reach out in the chat, put some things together based on what I'm talking about here. What do you think? And what would be helpful for everybody, who's doing this that might be interested in helping other people also utilize and do this? So some examples in consistency. I'm just going to give one. And again, full disclosure, this may be a city that I have worked with in the past to assist them in coming up with and doing things, but they are doing things far more than we did when I was there as well. But, you know, set comments that are consistent each time, that as well as that are detailed enough so that in this case, the arborist or the plan expediter that then shares this with the arborist, I hope. You know, for those of you that work on submittals on the side of being with the permittee, ask for the review comments. You have the right to review the review comments that are about what you submitted, as opposed to having them translated through 3 or 4 or 5 different people. One of the things, you know, here, again, some of these are cut off. So one of the things that happens with Miami is that they actually will provide it in Excel format so that you can expand the cells and actually get the whole comment. So this is just meant for those in Miami, you know, see if your programmers can figure out how the PDFs that get saved and printed off of the web pages actually will expand to include the whole comment, instead of giving people the live ability to just go in here and then I don't think they meant that I needed to put in color photographs, so I'm just going to delete that before I resubmit it, and maybe they'll forget that the comment didn't look like this, right? Hey, I may not do it, but there are people out there doing that. So consistency for me comes from coming up with standard templates as well as standard statements, right? So take it seriously. To me, here's the, you know, end of the presentation, except for the bonus report about the tree law. But the point is, this is your agency's reputation. Most of you have been around long enough or talked to enough people in and outside of the Landscape Inspectors Association of Florida that you know which cities have what kind of reputation and which don't. Some of you may even know what your reputation is for being consistent or inconsistent, for quote, giving somebody a deal or treating everybody the same, right? Being consistent is what builds success. Being consistent is what gets more submitters to your city to provide the information the first time that you're requesting and or requiring, than having to go over and over and over again and ending up with the tree permit holding up the $100 million building when everything else, including fire safety, was approved and reviewed 2 months ago, because you can't get the landscape architect to do the final revision and actually sign and seal it electronically using the proper program. I can't make this stuff up, people. It happens every week. So be consistent. There's an opportunity to be consistent. There's an opportunity for landscape inspectors. Henry, you listening to me? Henry, are you awake? I saw you yawning. Are you awake? To offer an opportunity to get together on this. Maybe we can do a town hall or a workshop or a Google Docs like John Snow does and some of the other work that we do together. And we can all start contributing to standardized templates for standardized comments. Okay. Meeting the tree law, right? I got what, 10 minutes left, Henry, but I'll leave a little time for questions. You got it, right? So the tree law, for those of you who haven't read it, it's easy to look it up. FS 163.045, Florida statute. It'll come right up for you. If you haven't seen it, right? As of July 1, let me make it a little smaller. It looks like this, right? That's it. You know, 2 pages has changed the quote life of how many trees in our communities, how many trees in our cities, and has presented an opportunity for, and this is my view of it, catching more easily those who lie, cheat, and steal in the green industry, especially about tree removals that may not actually qualify as tree removals, than any other law I've ever read. But you need to know how to follow it, and you need to know how to follow up when somebody uses it and you have a photo, even if it's Google Earth or an aerial, that shows that there was no reason for that tree to have gotten the report it got. So the inspection and the report needs to be provided by a current Florida ISA certified arborist or a licensed landscape architect. Just a little amusement, landscape architects are registered, they're not licensed. But you know, I'm not here to correct the legislature. I'm just here to point it out. So the property type as of now is a single family residence only per the code of that local jurisdiction, which may include duplexes or triplexes depending on the jurisdiction. You know, it's up to your municipality or your agency what you allow to qualify as single family. The law says single family. So does that mean homestead exempt or not? That's another consideration. The risk level is an unacceptable risk to persons or property. I had an amusement to myself that if it means persons as it's written, if somebody is the only person living in their house and their yard is gated and fenced, then it's only a hazard to one person. So you don't get to qualify for this exemption to permitting because it's not a hazard to more than one person. But, you know, that's just me. I read the words that are listed. All right. So, and an unacceptable risk is a high risk or an imminent hazard. Again, my terms, pulling from the tree risk assessment, pulling from the best management practices. And these are decisions by the certified arborist, not by the property owner. The previous version of the law, the property owner got to decide what was or wasn't a risk that was acceptable to them. Coming up with this language, it's the certified arborist needs to put this opinion in their report. It's a higher level of inspection, and it's a, hear me when I say this, a higher level of professional liability for the arborist that writes this report. There are arborists that may or may not actually have professional liability insurance that should think about ever writing one of these reports, because you are liable for coming up with this. Especially you're liable if you're wrong. So the inspection shall include all the industry standards in the tree risk assessment best management practices dated 2017, right? So in a sense, it's just the best management practices brochure. It's not everything else about tree risk assessment. That's interesting to me. And I'm probably parsing what other people teach about this, but again, I do a lot of legal expert witnessing, not as a lawyer, but as the expert that the lawyer asks for what things mean. So do you have to use the ISA forms? I'm telling you, you don't, but you have to follow the procedures, because the procedures don't tell you have to use the form. The procedures tell you that you have to follow the procedures however you report it. And you can report verbally. It doesn't have to be written. Anyway, so removal, my terms, reasonable option or the reasonable action if no other arboriculture activity can mitigate risk below moderate. You see how I capitalized below? That's what's in the law. What would be below moderate? Moderate is not below moderate. Low is below moderate. Very low is before moderate. Think about that when you take this class from other people. Hey, it's just me. I'm just out here doing it, reading it for what it is. So it's an imminent high risk as it stands, not based on future actions, right? So for the tree that's next to the sidewalk, that's lifting the sidewalk by 6 inches, that is only 4 inches away from the sidewalk. Again, just me, until you cut the roots, the tree is stable. The tree may even be in 80% health condition, although its location sucks. In an appraisal, a location may only be 5 or 10% because of it being overgrown and never should have been planted by that sidewalk. But it's a stable tree until you cut the roots. That's a permit tree. That's not a permit exempt tree. The owner decides to do the removal, not the certified arborist. That's important to me as well. So I give it to you now. Here is a recent version of the language that we put in our arborist report residential property. Some of what I went over before, but here's the paragraph, and I've gone through this with some inspectors at different cities, so you'll know why I'm pointing this out. Needed information to meet the language only. Inspection report not meant to be complete for use as retired documents for any permit or review process. That's my get out of jail free sentence. So for those clients who get caught and then they want to go ahead and just permit the tree and turn in my report, and this has happened, they get a review comment that says the arborist report states that it's not meant to be, nor does it contain the information for your permit. You need to get a new arborist report. And then I get a call, what the blippity blip did you do? And I say, oh, what happened? And then I say, yes, thank you for submitting the report and getting the proper response from the agency. What did you do? We told you that it wasn't supposed to be. And then we go through the permitting process. So, more about that on another day, but results and recommendations all listed out here for the trees. This may apply, right? It's their decision that it applies. It's not my decision. They're asking me to write a report that follows all the terms, includes all the information. I don't decide whether it fits under the law or not. They do. That's why they asked for it. Recommendation summary, based on the tree data, we may be recommending pruning, we may be recommending root pruning, we may be recommending removal because of the imminent hazard, or because we still recommend removal, but it doesn't meet the imminent hazard level, so it doesn't qualify for a permanent exemption. That's a statement we may make in our photo pages and the tree data. So this is an example. The other thing that I'll tell you now, the bonus of the bonus round, this front page never changes. The only thing we do is add the tree data, add the disposition for each tree, add the necessary photos. That's how templated even a report that has this high a liability for doing can be. But it's that templated because it has that high liability. So we can get into this more. And like I told Henry and the whole committee, this is its own class, and I would love to lead the discussion because I'm doing this and I'm doing reviews for cities on this, and I'm in the background where nobody knows I am, reviewing reports written by others. There's a lot to discuss, but the thing that you want to discuss as a cities is that knowing what's required, knowing all this language, knowing what the report's supposed to say or not say, is how you as an agency employee get to enforce your codes when the report is a lying, cheating, stealing about a tree that either qualified for removal but wasn't an imminent or unacceptable risk, or never would have qualified for removal. Because for me, the only trees that qualify under this are those that would qualify under your own code. So That's the point here that I want you to take home, because I'm teaching a class to those who do the inspections, who do the reviews, who do the violations, and for those who are so interested in doing a good job in private industry that they want to learn what the inspectors learn so they can meet the requirements of the inspectors. And you see me shaking my head up and down and a few other people. Yeah, wouldn't that be good if what you submitted was something that every city you submitted to said, hey, I like that. Let me use that as an example. So with that, let me just say, that's the Earth Advisor's difference. We're here to help you for a better shared environment. I'll put up a little information in case you don't know who we are, where we are. And Henry, that's my presentation.
Oh, my brain is full, let me tell you. Deborah, you want to go through I think we have like a 5 minutes if you guys can wait. I don't want to be between you and the dinner, but do you, Deborah, want to read I know Jon Snow has many questions over there.
Okay. What is your thoughts when code does not reflect current standards?
So I have reviewed city codes that actually reference all pruning should be done to the National Arborist Association Class 2 standards. So like I've been saying all along, that's the code. That's the code. The first thing I would do is point out that they are, 35 years behind the current industry standards, but you follow that code. I actually keep a copy of all the NA standards and use them in some court cases as well as submittals, tongue in cheek, but sometimes that offers me the opportunity to assist with code reviews and updating codes. So you always follow the code and you help that code officer learn that that's what their code says as opposed to what they want it to say. Next question.
There was a question about software. What do you recommend?
So, 50 different software programs out there. I will tell you that Planet Geo is the inventory or urban forest management software we use. I've consulted with, I guess, 8 or 9 different software companies that produce these over the last 25 years. So the result is that Planet Geo is the one who listened to me the most, and I'm still on some of their review committees. So that's why I'm with them, because I get the customization that I asked for. But it's on the internet. And if you want to follow up with me about any, software questions, but the other software, which is beyond what I'm showing, is all the different software that cities buy to automate and electronically process plan reviews, codes, record keeping, asset management. So there's some cities where every department has their part of that, basically asset or municipal management system. And there's one component or segment of it that's actually for the plan review or permitting. Like Miami uses e-permits, Hallandale Beach has a program, Pompano has a program they use. So, it's coming and more cities are using it. And like I said, automation is going to continue to be what happens whether you want it to or not.
Sean, do you recommend that photos have a stamp date on them?
So I provide an inspection date, which for me is assumed that those are my photo dates. But, for those of you who want to take one step further, putting a date on every photo is worthwhile. I have people who take the reports and the photo's a little offset to the left or the right, and they include basically a caption of the metadata, maybe not all the metadata, just to show if somebody wants to reference the photo, especially when people are using GPS with each photo where they're showing the XY coordinates of where each photo was taken, which can be important, or the view angle as far as compass angles. So that it's a good idea. I don't do it because I put the inspection date. It's just my shortcut.
I think that's it. John, thank you
That's pretty
very
short.
much.
All right, guys, it's time. 7:05. Thank you very much, John. This is an amazing presentation. Again,
Yes.
this is a lot of material to digest. And thank you very much. I know everybody here is a tree hugger, and everybody here wants to do the best for the trees. So
Yeah. Remember, we're the Landscape Inspectors Association of Florida, all of us, and we're the only ones in a position to provide the future landscape that everybody expects to be there. And we're trying to make it more resilient so it'll still be there. So please do your jobs, I ask you, and I will try and do my job. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
thanks a lot, guys. Enjoy your dinner. Bye-bye.
Bye.